Talk podcast. I'm your host Robbo, and today we've got the amazing Spartan. Molly, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much for having me.
No problem. So Molly, if people don't know, who are you, what is it you do?
So my name is Molly Spartan. I'm a beautiful bruiser and the son of professional wrestler, and which means of course I'm a professional wrestler. I think that's pretty much why you have me on this.
Yeah. So for people that know, I'm a wrestling fan, big fan throughout the years. And when ICW came along, it was like it built me up again. Like I watched ECW, so when ICW came out, like asked this brutal wrestling style. And then obviously the COVID has happened. How's that been wrestling? Because obviously you've had more pushes now because of COVID, that you're more on the screen.
I wouldn't say it's because of COVID. My debut for ICW was the last match for this, basically the World Viking Fight. So I did my debut in front of people and it did go over well. I believe I went over with the crowd very well. So I don't think it was just because of COVID that I've ended. I've managed to grab the bull by the horns and work with what scenario we can put in, which of course is a weird and very different environment to work in, because for years you're used to learning, teaching how to not just sell to camera but to sell to the audience, to get them involved, try and get audience participation, etc. And then you're just like, oh yeah, there is nobody here. So it's trying to sort of adapt to that, but it is interesting, but it's definitely been a learning experience, to say the least.
I can imagine, because obviously we've had a few on previous and last season, and they said that there's been a lot different. It's weird. Record shows and like when they're shouting and you realise there's music that they shout at.
Yeah, it's like watching like the first set of tapings back, and there's the amount of boys that go to like hit the ring canvas to G the crowd up, and I was like, nobody's there! Like, so it is very altering, but it depends on how you see the perspective of things. For me, it was more the idea of like, well, really, we've got the biggest audience we possibly could have, because now everybody's at home, and basically there's just, instead of lots of small eyeballs, there's just this one giant eyeball that you need to focus on, because it's not just the audience that would come to an ICW show now, it's also, there's the audience in America that have just gone into Peacock, which is in Peacock's in 34 million homes in America, which is nearly 6-7 times the population of Scotland. So that's, when you think about it, it's a bit mind-blowing, but it's that sort of thing. Plus, obviously everybody at home who are looking for independence, and it's more that sort of new fandom that people have found in wrestling when they've been stuck at home and deciding, I'll give this a go. Which means the hope is that there'll be those people that only had the network to watch American wrestling and watch SmackDown and Raw and NXT products, giving ICW or even Progress down in London a chance to look at the content and go, actually, you know what, this might be fun to go to. And that's really the hope when our live shows come back, which should be in July 25th. Showcase party. Oh, good.
My missus has got it from the bucket, so that's...
Like nothing's final yet, obviously, but we have a date, which is the light at the end of the tunnel.
It's a bonus, listen, we can't wait to go. So, how did you get into wrestling to start with? What got you into the wrestling scene and how did you get...
Well, just watching it or...
Watching it and getting involved.
And getting involved, right. So I've got a very odd story when it comes to how I ended up in wrestling. So, I ended up watching it because basically Cartoon Network went off the telly, which is essentially the same, but when I was growing up we used to have these small black telly-waste boxes that had red digits and stuff. And Cartoon Network was my absolute favourite, like die-hard Cartoon Network, still am.
Eddie,
I'm still one of the biggest Powerpuff Girl fans you will ever meet.
That was my generation, I
loved it. But what would happen at 9 o'clock, it would switch because the watershed, the Cartoon Network would go off and TNT would come on, which obviously TNT famously hosts WCW back in those times. So I remember there was one night, and for some reason there was always this screen that would come up and it would say, in my head, the logo, the TNT logo is spinning, but I don't know if I've just edited that in my own mind and that's how I remember this.
got a rough vivid memory or something like that. But
so we'd come up saying like, we're going into Watershed, the channel's about to change to TNT, blah blah blah. And there was one Friday night this didn't come up, and I thought, yes, like Cartoon Network's still going to stay on, I can watch this. And instead of basically instead of the Powerpuff Girls starting, Bill Goldberg's screaming face just appeared on screen, and I was like, ugh, and ended up sort of, that's basically how I discovered wrestling, because I was like, what is this? And it was something that like me and my brother would bond over as well, so eventually we watched that, and then we ended up obviously finding like WWF, WWE. He became absolutely infatuated with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Like,
everyone did it.
Well, that's the thing. He did, and he had this like. He genuinely, I always remember, he had this like laminated poster that he got from Kinross Sunday Market for like £1 when he was a kid, and it stayed on the back of his door until he moved out. Like this didn't move. Oh, it didn't move. When it came off, and the door colour paint was so different, it was ridiculous. But yeah, so he loved him. So in turn, that meant he was The Rock, but therefore I was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So he took Many a Stunner, I took Many a Rock Bottom, but that's just, we would lie there for the people's elbow and all that, and that was just us. And it was, although we grew up as very different, as in like our style-wise and individual, we were always very, very close. And I do think wrestling had something to do with that, because weirdly we kind of gravitated towards the personas that we would inevitably probably more reflect in real day life. But yeah, like love, like that was sort of a thing. And although like he started to grow out of it,
got more in love with it.
yeah, and it became everything. And then when I was at that point in my life where I was sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, I always say like at that point in time, there was nobody really on screen that I seen myself with and reflect with anybody. I think the closest I would say would be Beth Phoenix. And like stature and size, but she's still an American blonde lady, and I'm not that. Like, and I'm also, it was actually a thing where I've always said, like, although I've got absolutely nothing against her as a performer, I'm not Kelly Kelly. Never going to be Kelly Kelly. There was the size of Kelly Kelly.
Seriously, I'm boycotting the audience now.
Alright, okay.
Because they're really obviously the Iconics and stuff.
Yeah.
I brought back Eva Marie.
See, I'm not going to boycott it because you need to give her a chance.
Nah, I'll give her a chance, but it's one of these things.
You can't give her a chance if you're like, I'm boycotting.
I just thought I could really get rid of the Iconics.
They didn't get rid of the Iconics to bring back Eva Marie. That's not how the business works. Eva's been signed since September.
Yeah,
so she was there already. She's been on the contract since September and signed since September. The Iconics were like, I mean, I think there's a lot of them where, I don't know this, but I feel like just how contract negotiations can go, where I reckon somebody like Samoa Joe's maybe asked for more money, they've said no, and he's went, catch it. And because
Impact Bound.
Yeah, they're not even Impact Bound. ROH want Impact, there's AEW. Like, they're saying the people that they release, the majority of those people are going to be alright. Like, they're going to be job secure. I mean, we're all currently just watching our watches for the Iconics to show up in AEW. Let's all be honest. We are just waiting for whatever the next big pay-per-view is for them to rock up.
Yeah.
And I think AEW's close to when they do their women's tag tournament anyway.
Yeah, I've seen that.
There's all this stuff that's so close. So
they've done well from AEW.
Yeah, they've done great.
Coming from like a one-show thing.
Yeah. I mean,
and then they wind up doing
it's a fan-powered promotion, which is perfect, and it does make things exciting, and it does make things like where are people going to go and who's going to sign the what and things like that. It's given it that old school buzz like WCW and stuff like that again.
It was like Taya Valkyrie when she was at Impact, everyone was like, AEW, we don't have any idea.
Yeah.
And then she rocked up on WWE's Instagram.
Like Frank Money.
It's different. It'll be good to see her back around and fighting.
Yeah.
So ICW, how'd that come about?
So, when I was sort of deciding what I wanted to do with the rest, basically what I wanted to do, sort of study-wise and things like that, because there was nobody that I seen reflecting myself, I never put myself in the position of being one of the wrestlers, because I assumed, although I was comfortable and confident in my skin and my body type, etc., I never seen it on the screen, so I just assumed that I would be wanted there. I'd be rejected from the thing that I love most in the world. And then, so instead, I looked at the creative side of things. I looked at what WWE were looking for regarding their staffing, having educational wise, etc. etc. So I've ended up with a Bachelor of Arts degree in television because that's what it said in the WWE sector. That was the sort of qualifications they were looking for their staff. And so I went through all that, like did a full degree in television. So, but when I was doing that, I ended up doing a project on the Stand Comedy Club, and it was the one in Edinburgh, but there's one in Glasgow as well. Incredible comedy club, run by Tommy Shekel, just like some of the best comedy clubs in the world. Like people constantly go back to. Like I've seen people like Frankie Boyle, Michael McIntyre, Darren being there for like 5 or 10 hours before they do some arena tours. It's an incredible place. So I loved it, and it was I've got a real appreciation and love for stand-up. So I ended up doing a project on that as part of my uni course, and oddly enough, the comedian that was my main focus that I ended up following was Billy Kirkwood. And I ended up building a sort of a friendship with him because it turned out we were basically the male and female equivalent of one another. We both had hunters of hair, we both liked comic, we literally showed up at our first meeting. I was wearing a Punisher hoodie and he had a Punisher bag, and it was just like, right, okay, he was straight edge, I'm straight edge, he's dyslexic, I'm dyslexic. There was all these weird connections where I was like, are we the same person? And then there was the discovery that we both loved wrestling. So he then ended up with a job doing, at first he was a ring announcer for ICW, and obviously became the colour commentator. But he messaged me just going, by the way, you need to come and see this. It's essentially ECW with a Glaswegian accent. It's incredible, you'll love it. And I was like, right, okay. And I just went genuinely just to enjoy the show with a friend of mine, and then when I was there I was like, I need to be involved in this. I need to figure out how I can be involved in this. Plus I needed to find a work placement for my university for my degree. So I was like, right, I need to get whoever's in charge and talk to them. So I ended up just meeting Matt Dallas and going, hi, and as you can see, this was the early days of ICW. We were still in the classic brand. We were just about to move to, the show I seen was in Apollo 23, which is now Glee Club. Just gone into classic brand. I think one of the first shows I did was the first Square Go, and it was like it was proper exciting because they sold out the classic brand. That was the buzz backstage was ridiculous because of how happy everybody was for that. And then they moved to the garage was the next step, and I basically was like, look, I can get you a camera, I can get you microphones, I can get you a light, and there was nothing. All you need to do, at the end of the year, I'll give you a bit of paper, everything that I've done in the year, and you just sign it, and that's it. And of course, at that point in time, yeah, it was everything. It was tenor, and it was still with the very grim roots, and I was like, deal, yes, cool, no bother. So ended up working there as like a placement, and he got his camera and all this sort of stuff, and that's sort of it. And the thing is, once you finished, I just didn't leave, and I ended up moving to Glasgow and sort of dealt with the production side of ICW and sort of filmed all the promos and any shenanigans and things like that.
So shooting it, thankfully.
Yeah, all that stuff. But yeah, it was this sort of nice balance of all this great talent in the ring, but then extending it further with all the backstage stuff. So I ended up doing that, and then at one point, this honestly sounds like a rom-com mad film for like when I talk about this, but there was one night we were doing Studio 24 in Edinburgh, and I remember we were emptying the ring out, and it was absolutely passion. It sounds like the heavens had opened, and we're passing the ring beams out, and it's me and it's Wilfred. Now at that point, I wouldn't even say, like, we were friends, but we weren't like close friends, we were work colleagues, we see each other every month. He was just this big lovely dude that was never in any trouble, and I was the girl that would always show everybody to do the promos. And that was kind of him. But he was always just this nice big lovely dude, and we ended up chatting, and for some reason, something sparked in me to say, what's next for you? Because at that point the Vice documentary had happened, the sort of British wrestler Vice documentary had happened, and they'd interviewed Wolfie. And he was at that point, which I find funny watching it back, when he's just like, oh no, I just like wrestling at the weekends and running the family business with a pub. And I was like, so I thought, well, I'll ask you, what's the next step for you? What's the next thing in wrestling? You've essentially won everything, like what's next? And at that point, it was like, I really like to coach people. I think that's the next thing for me. I really want to coach. I have this sort of idea of what I want, how I want to coach and stuff and that. But he was worried that nobody would come because there was already two like well-known schools in Glasgow. It ran by people that he knew, so he didn't want to also step on people's toes and upset anybody by going to one and not the other. But he had this fresh idea. And just as literally words of encouragement as a pal, I went, okay, I'll be shoot number one. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'll be shoot number one. Therefore, you've gone past that hurdle, you've got one person. I was like, therefore, if you get one, you'll get two, you get two, you'll get four, you get four, you get eight. It's that kind of simple.
What gets about and
yeah, it's just that kind of way. And he was like, okay. I went, right now, you need to find your coaching staff, and you need to find where it's going to happen, and I'll be there. He was like, okay. And like a year later, I got this message from going, were you serious when you said you'd be shoot number one? I was like, yeah. Because like I've been brought up, like if I say I'm doing something, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
like I've not got a choice. If I check it out my mall, find it.
That would be like before that I was DJing.
Yeah.
Actually, when we are now, it's Cups and Cocktails, our host this season, it's amazing. I started my DJ career in here. I was sitting in the DJ booth with my pal who was a DJ at the time, and I've been watching for a few weeks and sitting watching what he does. And then he went, alright, I'm going for a flag on you go. Wait, a minute. What? You've got a minute to put this on. So that we beat match and like make sure that I get connected and we can do this.
Yeah.
And then it's just my career, I went to it. I can do this, I went on to do great things, and then when COVID happened I was like, obviously I had to stop and just you know yourself.
Yep.
And then I thought, I went to a podcast.
Yeah.
I put my mind to it and it started off just bringing on a few people and then it just word got about and we had YouTubers on, like streamers on, wrestlers, comedians, actors from other city. And word got about and it was like, you know what, I want to turn this into my hobby now. This is what I love doing, this sitting down with people and having a great chat. And it's been amazing. It's, if you ever go, do it, don't just see it. You're going to need to see it through. So you'd take the bill for you were going to go in.
So did that, and then GPWA was sort of born from just this weird bonus for a pal, which obviously when you're in wrestling you go closer and things like that, and then we ended up becoming proper friends and realising we had to have a chat one evening, and now he's my husband. So it's a weird, strange rom-com story. But yeah, like being originally when I went in, I genuinely went in with the idea of like it was just a new perspective of wrestling, because I believe that I mean, you know this yourself if you're a wrestling fan, like everybody that steps in the ring is in some form of wrestling training. Referees to the ring announcers of all, and especially WWE have some form of training. So I just felt right. I knew everything on the outside. I knew how the show ran. I knew the camera angles. I knew everything. I just didn't know what happened in the ring, like as a physical proper stance. So I thought, right, it's my time to learn that. So I genuinely went in just thinking I'm going to learn a new perspective. I'm going to learn a new way of looking at how to film this sport. And it was that weird moment being in the ring after like 2 or 3 weeks, and that weird notion of sort of realising like this is where I've always wanted to be, but for so long I always just assumed, and I always just in my own brain thought I'm not wanted here, so there's no point in trying because I'm not going to be accepted because of who I am. It wasn't that I wasn't comfortable with who I was, I just knew that wasn't in this world. But at that time as well, you had the likes of Piper Niven, depending on how you know her, was absolutely dominating, crushing it in Japan, and was doing it with all the airs and graces of being herself, being one of the most absolutely beautiful individuals, both inside and out, I have ever met, and just this head held high confidence of I am me and you will accept that. And it was sort of that, it was that sort of realisation of everything that I've looked at as like a negative or what's holding me back from doing this is actually the things that are going to excel me and be seen as somebody different or something a bit different about me, rather than the run-of-the-mill WWE divas, let's say, from the Tele 2000 kind of thing. So that's how I ended up becoming the wrestler. And it's that weird feeling of just going, oh, this is where I'm meant to be the whole time. I should have been here the whole time. But it just meant that now I just have to work extra damn hard. And and I am doing that.
Definitely. So your first match, again, like you said, was before all the craziness happened?
In ICW, yeah.
In ICW, yeah. How was that? How was your first match when you were in that lineup?
It was great. Like it was that interesting thing where I'm just new to ICW, but Molly Spartan isn't new to the British wrestling scene in any stretch of the imagination. I sort of took myself out of constantly just chasing and being in Scotland. Like, there was a year that I look back on my diary and I wrestled every single weekend. I hadn't once wrestled in Scotland. I wrestled everywhere. I had gone overseas, I had come back, I'd done everything. I hadn't wrestled in Scotland. And I didn't even realise that until the end of the year, where I was taking like next year's diary dates or in the back of my diary into the next diary, and I just went through and went, oh, wait a minute, this is strange. But yeah, like I've wrestled in ROH, I've wrestled and so I've done things like I did ROH when they did the UK tour. I've worked for a company called TNT in Liverpool for 3 years now. With the She-Wolves, that's where that was born, and that has been dominant and growing. We've completely revolutionised their women's division, from it going from their token women's champion and other girls coming in to an entire roster of females, of female just talent. And the last show we were at TNT, it went from 2 girls in a locker room to 9 women in that room who were all main players. It was myself, Casey, Rio, Lana Austin, Millie McKenzie, Charlie Evans, Gia Adams, Lizzie Evo and Angel Hayes were all in that room to perform on a show, and it wasn't that it was some special attraction because all the women, it was just, this was a crowd that had basically come accustomed to all this talent, and they were just like, oh, class, here they come. We're deemed and seen as wrestlers, and that's one of the main things that I want to do in wrestling, kind of thing. And we've done that down there, and we've done it a good. I've wrestled in, like, one of the last countries I wrestled in was Germany before the lockdown. So we've done ICW, then went to Germany, then came back, and then done Grados, and then the world shut. And it's that weird sort of notion of like, I have gone and seen countries. I've wrestled in Tel Aviv, I've wrestled in all sorts of places. So I have been wrestling. It's just I've just not been here wrestling. But being given the chance, I think for a long time. Sometimes I think it happens in all walks of life and in all industries, where when someone's too close to it, they get overlooked. And I feel like that was the case. Like I felt for a long time I was ready for ICW, but I was just being overlooked because I had been there since not day dot. I wasn't in the Mary Hill days, but I was very close to like the surgence of ICW and what it is to become. And yeah, I think